Gillette gives us a lesson in woke shaving. California teachers protest that their classes are too big while simultaneously welcoming all sorts of immigrants to their communities. And BYU and tacos. Next on The Dr. Duke Show. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Every week we cover those stories that matter to you, those educational stories impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses across the country. Greetings to our devoted listeners. If you're not devoted, well, get devoted. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and never miss an episode. It is absolutely free. We've got some important stories to cover today, so I'm bringing in homunculus Katie to give us the word, the last word, the final word, the first word.
We are starting with probably the most important story of the year. It's a story about razors. Procter & Gamble's Gillette released an ad that you would think would be aimed at selling more overpriced razors, but sadly, it's not.
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual harassment.
Masculinity.
Is this the best a man can get? Is it?
It's likely happening here in Bullying, as well.
A problem. We can't hide from it.
Sexual harassment is taking over.
It's been going on far too long. We can't laugh it off.
Who's the daddy?
What I actually think she's trying to say.
Making the same old excuses.
Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys. Boys will be boys.
But something finally changed.
Allegations regarding sexual assault and sexual harassment.
But she says
And there will be no going back. Because we believe in the best in men.
Men need to hold other men accountable.
Smile, sweetie.
Come on.
To say the right thing. To act the right way.
Bro, not cool, not cool.
Some already are. In ways big
Yo, men, we're acting like we gonna shake it.
and small.
I am strong.
But some is not enough.
It's not how we treat each other, okay? Okay.
Because the boys watching today will be the men of tomorrow.
And ain't that just so edifying? That's what you want from the company that makes your razor blades, right? A lecture to the very men who buy them how they have to check their toxic masculinity at the door. Remember the old motto of Gillette? Gillette, the best a man can get. I think we need to change it to Gillette, the worst a woman could think, because they hired an outside feminist director to come in and portray what it's like to be a man shaving. So rather than let men dealing with men's issues, now you're importing feminists to tell us through the process of shaving why we're too masculine.
See, what's happening is they're not properly defining their terms.
Right.
Okay, they start with the first half of this ad, and it's equating masculinity with being violent, rape, abuse, bullying, all sorts of things like that. But masculinity, for centuries, has been about being honorable and responsible and respectful and brave and protective. And basically chivalrous, right? We say that chivalry is dead. Who killed chivalry? Yeah. Who killed
That's
it?
right.
It's the feminists.
It's the same feminist scolds, Katie, as you know, who told men that to provide for a woman is insulting, that told men, we do not need you in families, we do not need you to raise children. The same women, feminists, who told men that when you get us pregnant, you have no say over the life in our bellies. You have no say on that whatsoever. The same feminist academic scolds who said, your very presence by opening a door or stopping by the side of the road to give us assistance, you are condescending to us. Who drove men away from that which is naturally masculine? You said it, masculinity. And why is it that femininity is an absolute thing that cannot be questioned? It is beauty, and it is nurturing, and it is loving, and it is strong. Masculinity, however, is exclusively a cultural construct. So that which is female is rooted in biology and rooted in truth, and it cannot be gerrymandered at all. But when it comes to masculinity, every aspect of masculinity is open for debate because there's no such thing as the male. What you're basically arguing here is that the woman is everything, the masculine is a deviant of what the woman should be. Right? And so to bring in Gillette, a feminist director, to lecture us about this, my question is, where is now the Gillette razors for women? Where are we going to get a man? In fact, hire me to do it, Gillette. What you pay these directors is ridiculous. Bring me in, let me direct a commercial about women shaving their legs and their armpits, which feminists don't do, with one of your little razors and give you a lecture in toxic femininity. I got a lot to say about mean girls. I got a lot to say about intolerant feminists who use slurs and generalizations like patriarchy, but get mad at you for doing the same thing back. I have a lot to say about the fact that men go to prison at much greater rates than women for diseases, for crimes that are similar. I got a lot to say about the fact that we spend a lot more on breast cancer research in this country than we do on prostate cancer research, even though equal numbers of people die. I was talking to my class about this today. I asked my students, raise your hand if you know the color for breast cancer awareness. And they all raised their hands and said pink. Good for them. I am really proud of those kids for knowing the cause, right? Breast cancer is something no man wants to happen to the women he loves. However, when I asked those similar students to name the color of the ribbon for prostate cancer, not one of them know. And as God is my witness, as I sit here right now, I don't know what it is. I have no idea what the ribbon for prostate cancer is.
It's either blue or brown.
It's blue or brown. One kid said he thought it was gold.
No.
Nobody knows.
I don't think it's gold. No. The people who made this Gillette ad, these same people who can't even define what a man is, are now telling you how a man should act. So they can't even get their story straight. They don't know what they're doing. And my big question here, again, you kind of touched on it. I mean, why Gillette? Why are they doing this? It's all a marketing ploy. We know that. Do you remember, I don't know how many years ago, I think it was back in like 2015 or something, Starbucks did that campaign, the Race Together campaign. So the baristas were supposed to write on the cups, race together, and then you're supposed to have a conversation about it. But I argue, I mean, I don't go to Starbucks to get 2 pumps of, in my coffee on race relations. I'm not going to go buy a razor from Gillette to be told about toxic masculinity, or you're not going to do that either.
Yeah, with all due respect, you're a barista. That's a very fancy schmancy progressive way of saying a coffee slinger, right? You'll pardon me if, as you're monkeying around with your steam espresso machine, that I don't take terribly seriously your views of race, right? Give me my coffee and shut up. That's why I'm at the point where I can't go to Starbucks anymore. I just can't. It's just too and this is what happened with Gillette, too. There seems to be cultural capital in virtue signaling. If you want to single out men, if you want to castigate white people, if you want to attack conservatives, if you want to make nasty comments about Christianity, you'll lose some customers, but you're going to gain all sorts of Twitter followers, right? You're going to be praised by people who would never use your product, and there's something about that kind of superficial validation that corporate America is really high on right now.
Absolutely, they are. Okay, well, I mean, if you're not going to use Gillette, that's okay, because it's January, and women, you're supposed to be growing your body hair and not shaving it at all. So for a month, make sure you're not shaving your legs, your armpits, or any other parts of your body. Laura Jackson is a 22-year-old drama student at the University of Exeter in the UK, and she started this movement after growing her own body hair for a performance and noticed her own reaction to it. She said, after a few weeks of getting used to it, I started to like my natural hair. Though I felt liberated and more confident in myself, some people around me didn't understand why I didn't shave or didn't agree with it. So she has an Instagram page that she started, and it's called January, and they're using the Just Giving website to raise money for Body Gossip and the Performance Project. It's going to explore body positivity in the current media age through a creative writing and drama workshops in secondary schools, universities, and community settings.
I love the fact that she's a drama major, number one, because that says it all. But look, ladies, in case you've missed this, men are not the least bit concerned what you do with your bodies. I know you think we're lurking in your closets ready to pounce on you. If you want to grow arm hair down to your ankles, if you want to have beards and mustaches, knock yourself out. If you don't ever want to shave your legs so you look like a Wookiee in a miniskirt, who cares? But don't then turn around and get mad when we don't ask you out on dates, when we're not interested in cohabitating with you, when we're not terribly interested in dating you. The fact is with this whole transgender revolution, how many stories have we done about transgender people now griping that men don't want to date them? We're real women. Men don't want to date us. You have the right to do whatever you want to your body. And the fact that you can grow hair as women is hardly an accomplishment that requires a PhD. So by all means, Put your Gillette razors aside, right? You boycott Gillette like we're going to boycott Gillette. Put your Gillette razors aside and let it all hang out. As the musical sang from the 60s, hair, long, beautiful hair, grow it. But you cannot then turn around and get annoyed that men won't ask you out. What you want, feminist, is to be hairy little Wookiees and demand that men date you anyway. You can have one, but not the other. You can have your cake, but you can't eat it. Grow up.
In a related story, we have a headline that says, "Mothers in shock as daughters come home from college with mustaches, breasts removed." This is actually coming out of the College Fix, and it was a story written by Jennifer Kabani, who's the editor there. She explained a story that was brought to her about an organization called Fourth Wave Now. It's a left-of-center online community concerned about rapid onset gender dysphoria and related issues. So it's kind of interesting. The founder and the primary author of this Fourth Wave Now says, "I created this site because mine is a viewpoint that is seldom publicly heard, that of a left-leaning parent who is critical of the dominant paradigm regarding transgender politics and treatment. My primary concern is children, teens, and people in their early 20s, particularly girls, who are contemplating medical transition." And so she has a ton of anecdotal stories on this website, and other parents have written in talking about how their daughters go off to college all excited to learn, and they come back angry. Sometimes they have the mustaches. They've, even gotten their breasts removed. And they actually have a Wall Street Journal story called "When Your Daughter Defies Biology." And I think it's a good summation of how this whole thing happens. They led their story with this anecdote. "The young woman went off to college, which began, as it often does these days, with an invitation to state her name, sexual orientation, and pronouns. When her anxiety flared during her first semester, she and several of her friends decided their angst had a fashionable cause: gender dysphoria. Within a year, the young woman had begun a course of testosterone. Her real drug, the one that hooked her, was the promise of a new identity. A shaved head, boys' clothes, and a new name formed the baptismal waters of a female-to-male rebirth."
Yeah, and there's a lot going on in this story. I have less sympathy for the stupidity of college kids. If you're a college kid who goes through this, knock yourself out. I agree with the critic here. I don't think a 17 or 18-year-old is old enough ultimately to make this decision for a lifetime. But step back for it. The thing that bothers me about this is kids are leaving home for college. They're going to colleges that are very expensive. And part of the expense that those kids experience in their tuition, why tuition is so high, among other things, at many colleges are paying for gender transition surgery. So kids at 17 and 18 whose parents may not have the insurance coverage to cover this go to college. They're paying extraordinary rates of tuition, and now you can go one semester and come back the next semester with a gender surgery. You could be completely transformed. These kids are coming back home to mom and dad without ever having told them what they were going to do, and showing up like with mustache or with their breasts removed. And again, at 17, 18, I suppose you have the right to do that, but I do question the legitimacy of universities mandating fees to pay for this. Why are we allowing universities to have other kids pay for your gender surgery? Because that you know as well as I do. And if you can argue all you want that it's from a separate pile of money or we're coming, no, you're not. You're spending money that's coming into you from your students on that stuff. And because of it, you have to raise the price of everything. And here's a question for you. Why, if you're going to allow kids to change their bodies because they're unhappy, why don't you give the flat-chested girls free breast implants if they want them? Why don't you give the guys with scrawny legs calf implants, right? I mean, why is it important to spend all that money that's not yours, universities, to make transgender kids feel safe in their bodies when almost nobody does at that age? At 16 and 17, nobody feels comfortable in their body. There's always something you could provide plastic surgery-wise. Why will you cover transgender surgery exclusively, but you won't cover my calf implants? You won't cover Katie by adding a couple of inches to her heel to make her a little taller. You wouldn't do that, would you?
You know what? I'm going to go ask him now.
Ask him. Demand it.
I will demand.
Because then you flood the system with this. There is no good reason why, only other than the fact that it fits your political inclinations, to give this one group this special kind of treatment, deny it to others, but then charge all kids a percentage anyway when they pay their increases in tuition.
Well, they're the ones who are yelling the loudest, and if you yell loud enough, they'll cave to anything.
I'm pretty sure if I yell loud that you owe me calf implants, they're not going to give them to me.
Well, not you. You're a white male. Sorry.
So it's not who yells the loudest.
It's whoever on the intersectional ladder is at the highest. If they yell, that'll happen.
One goofy undergraduate with a meek little voice who says discrimination. That's enough on a college campus to make you have to pay for it.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's hit the high school campus now, where in Detroit, we had a substitute teacher, a 63-year-old female substitute teacher at Cody High School, who was attacked by a teenager. She was punched by a 14-year-old male student after she had reported the student for having drugs in the school. Now, according to student witnesses like Brandon Antisdale, the boy ran up to the old lady, hit her, pushed her on the ground, and hit her again. That's not something anybody should do, especially to an old lady. Now, this is what happened. Instead of everyone just videoing the teacher getting attacked and no one doing anything, the student had run out of the room and some of the boys followed. And then they got some video of it. So the students responded, Antisdale and his 2 other students ran after the suspect. And he said, "My friend Keontae and my man John, we all felt offended of it because that's somebody's grandmother." So they ran out, chased him down, and started punching on the suspect. And like I said, in the hallway, they actually had video of this. Now, what's really interesting to me is the suspect's father is actually defending the teacher. Usually in these instances, the parents will be like, "Oh, no, my kid, something provoked him." But the father actually says that, 1, his son was high at the time, so he was right. And 2, that the teacher was doing her job, that it's her job to protect the children. And I love when the dad asked his son, "Why did you do this?" The son said, "Well, she snitched on me." And you know what snitches get.
Stitches.
That's right.
What a happy little family story. Look, again, the takeaway for me is, why is it that to bring justice to American public schools, you have to engage in acts of vigilantism? How have we allowed a situation where American schools have devolved into places of relative anarchy and chaos? We've had many stories about this, about all kinds of violence. How many stories have we done about teachers and students getting into fights? Why is this necessary? Part of the reason why it's necessary is because of Obama's disparate impact legislation, right? The Obama administration, being the ultimate social justice fairy tale utopia administration, decided that the reason why inner city kids were getting punished more than suburban kids is because they were tended to be ethnic minorities and not white kids. So it had nothing to do with behavior or choices. It was just plain out racism. A bunch of evil white teachers at inner city schools just punished those kids for no reason. Turns out that oftentimes inner city kids come from broken homes, no social oversight, not 2 parents in the house. You have a situation oftentimes in inner cities where drugs are readily available to these kids. And so they show up disinclined to learn, angry, rebellious, not used to discipline or structure, right? So the Obama administration brilliantly decided that the answer to this was not to punish inner city kids, ethnic minorities, so it would look bad. So if ethnic minority kids in inner cities do bad things, we'll let it go in the name of social justice. So guess what you get more of in inner city kids? 63-year-old grandmothers getting curb stomped, right? Yeah. While some baked high school junior, right, don't like them old ladies snitching.
Okay.
Right? And so there you go. Thank you, Barack Obama. What, unfortunately, Barack Obama and the social justice warriors don't realize, the worse the kid's home life, the worse the kid's attitude, the less prepared a kid is to learn in a structured environment, the more discipline he needs.
Now, the school district's response, of course, is they are terribly disappointed.
In who?
In the student, that the student would attack a teacher. But the teen was locked up at the Wayne County Juvenile Detention Facility in downtown Detroit and charged with aggravated assault, possession of marijuana, and creating a disturbance in school.
Here's my question. How soon before the dad gets a lawyer or somebody gets a lawyer and that kid is compensated for being beaten up? For beating up grandma. How soon before that happens?
That will be interesting. Another thing is there was like a school security guard who also got beat up in this situation, so we'll see what happens with him too. So 3 people out of this whole scenario were beat up.
But hey, public schools, keep teaching your kids that public schools that have cops in them are oppressing kids. You keep teaching them that the police officers are the problem. You keep chasing police coordinating officers off of campus because it creates a hostile learning environment. Granny just got a double wide in the teeth. You're telling me more cops on campus is a bad thing? Get over yourself. Barack Obama's off making billions of dollars for Netflix. You can forget the woke presidency. Let's go back to some common sense education. Can we?
I'm just glad Granny is doing okay. They said she's in stable condition, so that's a positive. Okay, well, we're not going to be learning much, at least out in LA, because the teachers union went on strike. For the first time in 30 years, the Los Angeles Unified School District, which is the second largest school district in the nation, had its teachers start striking on Monday, and they were marching toward the school district offices. They are demanding higher pay and smaller class sizes, and school officials said this would cause the district to go bankrupt because they already owe about $500 million in deficit there for this budget year alone, and they have billions that are obligated already towards pensions and health care coverage for the retired teachers. Now, the union has anywhere, because I can't find a good stat on it, from 30 to 35,000 members, and they're saying this, the protest, they're striking, they've had about like 32,000 teachers walk out. So they actually went to the bargaining table, and of course, just like we had the Democrats do with the border wall situation, the union left the negotiations on Friday, and so they rejected getting 1,200 new teachers and librarians and counselors. They rejected reducing class sizes by at least 2 kids per class. They rejected a 6% raise because they need 6.5%. And they rejected what would be a $24 million increase.
So basically, the school caved in on everything they asked for. They gave them a little bit of everything they asked for, right? So the most important angle of the story that I want to talk about is what do they call themselves, these protesting union teachers?
The Red for Ed.
And what does Red for Ed mean? Explain the word red. This is a teachers union. Why do they work the word red into this? They're advocating and agitating for communism and communist ideological worldviews in the classroom. They are using their socialist platform as a way of holding your school kids hostage so they get more money and more resources. And these are the same quasi-socialist teachers who supported the anti-border people. These are people who want open borders. These are people in Los Angeles whose attitude is the more illegal immigrants and their children who come to our communities, the better. And they somehow want fewer kids in the classroom. So on the one hand, keep bringing us your tired, your unwashed, your South American refugees. You bring them to Los Angeles, but we don't want to teach them. You bring them to our schools, but you got to lower our teaching classrooms. How do you square that circle? But again, you'd have to have math to understand that, and I'm not sure these teachers do.
Well, in the students right now, they're already getting reports from different parents and students interviewing, well, what's happening at school then while these teachers are out striking? They had to hire about 400 substitutes, and about 2,000 administrators had to basically jump into the classroom to see, basically they're going to babysit the kids, because a lot of the students are saying, well, we just keep getting shipped from different auditorium to auditorium because they don't have enough adults to watch the students. One 9th grader said that some kids were just huddled around a TV watching Michelle Obama, her recent little stint on the carpool karaoke. If you've ever seen it, they're kind of good. And then other kids are just browsing the internet and doing busy work and doing nothing.
So in other words, it's business as usual.
It's business as
usual. So what
yeah.
distinguishes a classroom in California, Los Angeles now, from the one before? Kids not paying attention, kids not being paid attention to, teachers involved in all sorts of things that have nothing to do with education, a lot of social exchanging going on, a lot of screen time with cell phones and TVs. What is the difference here? In fact, why don't you just fire those 32,000 teachers, double the rate you're paying the substitutes, and get the same crappy result? I mean, that's just economics 101. You're being held hostage. This drives me nuts. And do you notice what the teachers are saying? More money, more resources, lower work. We have to teach less students. What we demand here are all the things that are going to make our lives easier, but they are not in any way, shape, or form going to teach your kids more math or science. Not at all. And I go back to the point. You can't have a situation where you're inviting tens of thousands of children of illegal immigrants to your schools and then and supporting that as teachers, and then demanding that you don't have to be the ones to teach them. What you ought to be doing is take every class you're getting paid to teach now, and you should all be forced, because of your political stance, you should be forced to teach a second class exclusively of illegal immigrant kids. That would be a better way of showing your woke bona fides than just demanding we let them in and then trying to get somebody else to have to teach them instead of you.
Yeah, the average salary for these teachers, by the way, is about $75,000. That's the average. But here's my main point, my big takeaway from this entire thing. These teachers are out on the streets holding up signs that say, on strike for our students. So here's my question. There are more than 62,000 students who have special needs and are highly impacted by this breakup of their normal day. How are you on strike for them? We have more than 40% of their students need to take remedial classes just to graduate, and their overall graduation rate in that school district is 83%, and they're all proud of that. How is that helping our students succeed? And then we have their Smarter Balanced Assessment results, which show that only 42% of their students are proficient in English language arts, only 31% are proficient in math. How is that helping our students? And the kicker for me is a GoFundMe that they put out that has raised more than $30,000 to feed tacos for teachers who are striking at this moment. But what about the 80%? They have more than 80% of their students are eligible for the free or reduced breakfast and lunch, and it breaks down to almost 300,000 students every day who depend on that breakfast and 257,000 who depend on that lunch. How is any of this showing that the teachers are on strike for the students?
We've known for years and years and years that the primary purpose of teachers' unions is not to improve your kids' education, it is to improve the lives of teachers. And one of the things that improves the lives of teachers is to pay them a lot of money and not make them teach very much. You mentioned the GoFundMe, right? So some idiots, some progressive idiots have coughed up $30,000, right?
Yeah, so it's a bunch of people have coughed it up, but the sponsors are the Democratic Socialists of America, the International Socialists of America, and everyone who's commenting who have donated say solidarity.
Solidarity. So this is a complete socialist movement, from the people funding it to the people walking out. But here's the thing. I want to know, inquiring minds want to know. Apparently it's racist for white people to eat tacos. So here you have a situation where you have a huge number of white teachers who are on strike. And GoFundMe pages by socialists are feeding them tacos. It seems to me you are drawing all sorts of implications about race here. Are you suggesting that tacos are the cheap food, that somehow Mexican food is some kind of gutter street food that can be served up in these instances? Why are you allowing primarily white teachers to eat a very, very culturally specific kind of food? You would think young Democrat socialists would have diversified the menu. Why is there nothing from any other ethnic groups here? Why are you not feeding kids? Why are you assuming that all these kids are going to eat these teachers want tacos? And what about vegan and vegetarian teachers, right? Vegan and vegetarian teachers. I mean, this whole thing is so stupid. I go back to what I said before. Teachers' unions are an absolute blight on this country. Their sole focus, again, is to, and we've seen walkouts in places like Oklahoma, and they're rejecting raises. Right? In Oklahoma, they were offered a sizable raise, and it wasn't big enough here. They were offered a 6% raise. I can't tell you, in all my years of teaching at the university, 25 years as a university professor, I never in 25 years received a raise any year more than 1%. And there were 12 of the 25 years I received no raise. You're offering them in 1 year a 6% raise.
They wanted it to be over a 2-year period just to catch them up, but that was offensive. That was offensive to
they
the
found
union.
It offensive.
Yeah, they said they wanted 6.5% right away.
That's right. And then they wanted more. And the reason they're able to get away with this is because they hold your kids hostage. If I said I'm not teaching my university classes until I get a 6% raise, they fired me. Right? But now you've got the union in here. And so the point is that even when the school district, school board, they come to these teachers and almost every single point, they're giving significant things to the teachers collectively. Not good enough.
Well, and even the governor, the new governor, Newsom.
Gavin Newsom.
He even said some of the money he was going to raise the amount overall that California is getting, and some of that money in that raise would be going to LA. So still not good enough.
Yeah. So in other words, what are we talking about here with teaching? Where did we lose the fundamental idea that if we weren't educating our children, we were failures? If we were not getting kids to pass grade level, getting kids to be literate, getting kids to be ready for college, and they're doing none of it in Los Angeles. Los Angeles is one of the worst school districts in a country full of really, really bad school districts. If you can't do that, why are you entitled to anything, including a taco?
Exactly. Well, many of these students, the students in LA, would benefit, I think, from maybe attending some charter schools. And we're finding out that actually, being in a charter school can be highly beneficial to a lot of students. There's recent research that was done by Stanford. The Seattle Times reported on results from Washington State's charter schools where black students and English learners perform better than those in public schools. So they looked at a 3-year span of data, and overall they found that charter school students' scores on math and reading exams grew at basically the same pace as peers who were in traditional public schools. But the Stanford University's Center for Research on Education Outcomes found staggering data when it came to English learners. And they found that those students who were in charter schools actually gained an equivalent of 83 more days worth of instruction in reading and math. They found that evidence for black students who were enrolled in charter schools, there was similar growth in reading and math as white students in public schools, but the public school kids who were the black students who were in public schools had 71 fewer days of learning in reading and 59 fewer days of learning in math.
Right, and the thing here is that already California is making, under Gavin Newsom's progressive new leadership, is making inroads to the possibility of trying to ban charter schools. Already the same teachers unions that have failed to educate your kids in Los Angeles schools, but that are eating lots of tacos donated by socialists, those teachers, they're pushing state governments now, teachers unions, to pull back support for charter schools. You have there are some school districts, including one of the things that the Los Angeles teachers are griping about is too many resources are going from them and to charter schools. All I can say this is coffee is for closers. Tacos are for teachers. They're not for non-teachers. That money that's being siphoned away from the Los Angeles school district is going to charter schools. And as you just demonstrated by a Stanford, California report, the charter schools are educating the kids better. What we need to do is show up on those streets and go up to every one of those teachers, give them a perfunctory slap across the face, take their tacos, package them up, and send them to a charter school. Have lunch, guys, because you're teaching Los Angeles kids how to read. These teachers aren't.
Well, that sounds good. And what's interesting to me is the fact that Stanford did this research, and it's from, the northern neighbor. It's like Washington, which Washington and California are basically one and the same. So if it's going to work in Washington's charter schools, it can travel south there and work in California as well. So, but speaking of Stanford, let's just stay with a Stanford-related story. We have the all-gender locker room now open for undressing. At Stanford University, they began the process of making an all-gender locker room back in August at the Arrillaga Outdoor Education and Recreation Center. And last week, they had the open house. So everyone could check it out. And apparently, it is meant to provide a more inclusive environment and is open to anyone, regardless of gender identity. The Assistant Athletic Director for Facilities and Operations, Rebecca Carpenter, told the student newspaper that the space is a response to a community which has been more vocal about all gender spaces and is part of the university's goal of gender-inclusive restrooms in all campus buildings by 2020.
Let's call it what it is. If you are providing a space for all genders and you deceptively call that inclusive, what you are arguing is that gender doesn't matter. You are suggesting that gender isn't anything at all. If all genders are the same gender and you are providing a space where anybody can go for any reason, you are not affirming gender, you are actually denying it. You are actually denying any difference between the genders. You are arguing basically that it doesn't matter how you identify, it doesn't matter what your biological gender is, it doesn't matter what's in your pants. All that matters is that once you enter this space, your gender doesn't matter. This is a big leap forward in the transgender movement, which we always knew was coming. This was never about getting a very, very tiny percentage of the population equality. This was about deconstructing gender altogether. The same thing with Gillette and masculinity, right? This is all about the only way men, according to Gillette, can be men is to really stop engaging in masculine behavior. That's what you have to do. Break it down that you have to, if we can move men to be more like women, and then encourage women to be more like men, right? January, right? So men shaving has to be given to us with a trigger warning that if you're shaving as a man, let that be a lesson to you that you need to scale back your rampant masculinity. If you are a feminist and a woman, grow your hair and don't shave it. Used to be a time when women didn't like beards on men because they were too masculine, right? Now we've reached the point where clean-shaven little soy boys are exactly what Gillette prefers, and really, really hairy women with calluses on their knuckles. That's what we want in our women.
I just ate lunch not that long ago. Please
Was
stop.
it tacos?
It should have been. All right. I like what Bobby Radecki said about this, she, we don't know, is a junior and a Wyland Health Associate. It's one of their groups on campus that's all about this. Bobby said that spaces like the gym and the pool, where students might be wearing revealing athletic clothing, can be especially distressing to folks who are trans and gender nonconforming, who might not be totally comfortable with their bodies. Athletic facilities can really be a place of high stress, and so having the gender-neutral locker room is definitely a positive step in helping to alleviate that.
Wait. So this idiot actually said that transgender people are frightened about the bathrooms because of the differences in genders. And the way to fix that is a room where everybody of all different genders are naked.
Thank you.
So you're stressed out that you might get a glimpse of somebody's tighty-whities if they have a penis. And so because of that, because as a man who identifies as a woman, the possibility of seeing men naked bothers you, we're going to go to a system where you see everybody naked. Brilliant.
Well, and this is going to become a thing because with the gym, and at Planet Fitness, they do this, the lunk alarm. If you're too fit, they make you, like, you have to wear certain clothing because you can't show off your muscles or any of that because...
Makes people feel bad.
It makes them feel bad. So you have this all-gender thing. You're going to have a masculine guy who's like, all-gender, I'm a guy, I go in. He's going to be too buff, and the little trans kid's going to run away and be scared and complain. And then what's going to happen? Anyone who actually has muscles, who actually goes to the gym to work out and not make a, SJW statement, what's going to happen to that?
Everything, according to the left, everything is a social justice statement. It doesn't matter. None of this matters. And I go back to what you said before. This actual student suggested that the same people who are nervous in gyms because of the merging of the genders, the different genders they encounter in the bathrooms, are now going to feel less bothered because every gender, everybody is in the same space? How does that somehow help you? All you're doing is getting a lot more of what you said you were afraid of in the first place.
Yeah. Makes no sense. Neither does this next story, where we have an unfortunate image of a 10-year-old boy who is basically posing with a naked man. So there's a story about Nemus Quinn Melicon Golden, a 10-year-old boy who was featured in a Huck magazine piece highlighting the life of a so-called child drag queen. Now, young Nemus, whose drag name is Queen Lactatia, was shot by photographer Jonathan Frederick Turton for The Spread. In one of the shots that didn't make the magazine, Nemus, in full drag makeup and a black dress, is posing for a photo with the Season 7 winner of RuPaul's Drag Race, Violet Chachki. In the shocking photo, as you guys can see, Violet is wearing nothing but a pair of heels and a small piece of fabric covering his genitals. Now, what's even worse about this, that if that's not gruesome enough, Nemus's mother, Jessica, conceded that drag has a sexual component, but is unapologetic about her young son wearing sexually suggestive clothing if it makes him feel beautiful. Drag is an adult arena, and that's where people question our judgment, said Jessica. So we have to censor things. He knows there are adult aspects of drag that he's not allowed to apply to his show. We would never try to overtly sexualize our child, but if he wears something that makes him feel beautiful, what right do I have to stop him wearing that dress? Because it might cause people to think things they shouldn't be thinking. It's a circular problem.
Yeah, let's be clear here. For children that young, beauty is something that's taught. This idea that he feels beautiful in women's clothes is not an idea that came to him overnight or spontaneously. These hippy-dippy parents of his, right, clearly have encouraged this. We saw this story a couple weeks ago. Transgender boy who dressed as a transvestite as a girl, dancing in a gay bar, having money and catcalls and whistles hurled at him. That is the same thing here. You are sexualizing these children. And as we said time and time again, if that were a little girl, who was an actual little girl instead of a boy pretending to be a little girl in this same circumstance, we would immediately be calling, the feminists would immediately be calling for sexual abuse. All right, the same feminists who argue that women need their own spaces, women's bodies need not to be constantly under the gaze of the masculine. When it comes to this kind of nonsense, go utterly quiet. And so again, the inherent contradictions, fallacies, illogical turns of thought that go into all of this progressive remaking of culture. One of the things you had asked earlier in the program, it's happening so fast. that no one is taking a breath to study this. No one is taking a breath to try to consider the underlying science of all. No one's taking a breath to consider what an 8-year-old now who hasn't gone through puberty is going to experience when she's 22, and all the otherwise female aspects of her body have kicked in. There's been no caution here. There's been no time for us to try to assimilate this and pay attention to what people's needs are. You're rushing to do this at catastrophic speed so that no one can tell you no.
Well, and according to Woke Jessica, the mom, she says, there's so much more going on in the world right now, which is more horrifying and terrifying than my child wearing fancy shoes and a skirt. This shouldn't be on anyone's list of priorities.
Right. And so now you're going to tell me that you can do very questionable things about your kid's identity, sexuality, and the people he's hanging out with at 10 years old, the almost naked people he's hanging out with at 10-year-old, that's not a priority for shouldn't be a priority for us because it's not a priority for you.
Yeah.
And while there are many nasty things going on in the world, you are contributing to it. You are not in some way, shape, or form a much lesser part of the problem. Your attitude and the way you view your children is part of a revolution in the way we treat children. On the one hand, we hear from millennials, right? That they consider themselves children till they're 35 years old. That until they first have their wife and kids, that they want to extend into their 30s and 40s the benefits of childhood, playing with toys, video games, lack of responsibility, no real job, living in mom's basement. On the other hand, the same progressives who make that argument are the same progressives who say, on the other hand, we're going to treat a 7-year-old like a 50-year-old. We're going to treat a 9-year-old like a 50-year-old when it comes to something as serious as their actual biological sex. So we'll treat these kids as tiny, tiny babies when it comes to getting jobs or having lives or taking care of themselves or providing their own insurance. But when it comes to the kind of naked people they have sticking money down their G-strings when they're 10, that's just a matter of treating these kids like adults. Who am I? You're here's mom. The purpose of being a parent is to tell a kid like that, you may think this is what you are. And I'm a tolerant mom, I'm going to let you think that. But you don't get to dance half naked in front of other naked men until you're 18 and out of the house. How about that, Mom?
Yeah, well, and the things that they're talking about being horrifying and terrifying, they're busy calling social services on all those homeschool parents who can't socialize their children properly, and how dare they teaching the actual history of America. Bunch of bigots. All right, well, we're going to go to BYU, Brigham Young University. We have a fun story about cultural appropriation out there because it strikes again. Taco Tuesday, the theme today, tacos. So if anyone's out there and is hungry, sorry. We have Taco Tuesday being eliminated on the BYU campus. The Melvin J. Ballard Center for Economic Self-Reliance at BYU removed an Instagram post that they had put up of 2 of the students who are dressed as tacos and wearing Latin American attire to promote free tacos on campus. Now, if I was a student on that campus and they came up and said, hey, free tacos, I'd be running to wherever those tacos are. But of course, people got offended and deemed the photo insensitive. And so within hours, just maybe it was less than that, maybe it was minutes, the Ballard Center deleted the photo, issued an apology, and said earlier today the Ballard Center shared a social media post that was insensitive. We are very sorry and regret creating the post. Thank you to all who have taken the time to reach out. Your comments highlight the compassion you have for others. We appreciate your insights, feedback, and the learning opportunity.
Yeah, and we've bashed, so metaphorically bashed those tacos already in a number of other stories for the day. I will simply say, when did sensitivity become the only serious thing we're allowed to take into account in college campuses? When did universities stop engaging in the real uncomfortable business of helping kids grow out of themselves, helping kids' minds expand beyond what they know and think? When did universities get into the business of coddle first, culture second? When did we get into the idea that if all you learn for $150,000 over 4 years at your college is how to be sensitive, we have done our jobs? You have not done that. And what you call sensitivity, looked at from the proper lens, is really just grievance culture, right? You're giving kids away, you're giving free tacos to kids. People like tacos, right? You're not giving them castor oil. I could see if you were giving them castor oil with sombreros on, forcing them to eat something that you didn't like. But everybody likes tacos. Congratulations, Mexico. You have a cuisine that the gringo likes. Giving away free tacos is not an insensitivity. It is something to do to acknowledge the reach of Mexican culture. And because a couple of kids wore a sombrero, sensitivities have been violated.
They're taking the social justice warrior hill to die on. This is their thing, cultural appropriation. And that's the true offense right there. That's what offensive is because they think that they need to speak up on behalf of these groups. We've seen it too many times with, Native Americans, like, how dare you have the Redskins? They talk to the actual Native Americans, they're like, I'm not offended. Only you, little social justice warrior, is offended by these things.
And on a college camp, this is the hill you want to die on, to use your phrase, tacos. I'll bet at every university I've ever taught at, all of them, we've had white women teaching African American literature. What's the greater cultural appropriation? Free tacos for everybody and a stupid sombrero? Is that really what you're angry about? But these same liberals who get exercised about that have no problem with white people teaching Hispanic and African American literature on college campuses. Oh, but we can't find qualified candidates. When has that stopped you before? Give up your job, resign your position, and put an unqualified African American in there and let them teach African American culture. At least then you would have no cultural appropriation. But somehow you don't do that. You focus all your energy on tacos and not the fact that you got pasty white people teaching minority literatures. That doesn't seem to rattle your progressive cage.
All right, well, that's what we have for today's taco edition of the Dr. Duke Show. Make sure you head to drdukeshow.com, subscribe to the podcast, listen again, maybe head over to iTunes, give us a 5-star review, talk about what toppings you like to put on your tacos. I'm a nacho gal myself, but to each his own.
And that does it for us this week on the Dr. Duke Show. If you like what you heard, please share the podcast with your friends. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Taco Katie, and we'll see you next time.